What's going on, YouTube? Today I bring you my overview and analysis for the Julio Jones trade. I'm sorry this is coming pretty much a full day late. I was in the middle of nowhere yesterday without my recording stuff, and of course, what I was worried about was what if someone gets traded? What had to happen? Julio Jones got traded, but better later than never, I guess. So let's start talking about this. Before we get into it, I want to talk about the timeline up to the trade. So, obviously, 2011, Julio Jones gets drafted by the Falcons, 6th overall, and he pretty quickly, shows that he is a very talented receiver, reaching Pro Bowls and getting all pro nods pretty quickly for his career. Immediately shows he is a force to be reckoned with. In 2017, the Falcons reached Super Bowl 51, but, we all remember what happened in that game. Tom Brady, was Tom Brady. And after that Super Bowl, the Falcons just kind of started to collapse. I mean, after that Super Bowl loss, they kind of became prone to just letting people come from behind and beat them. They just immensely just started losing players, losing competition, and, throughout all that, Julio Jones remained great. I mean, he became the receiver to reach 10,000 yards, the fastest by any receiver ever in 2018. I believe it was only his 7th season at that time. He was obviously a very great receiver. By the way, if I sound a little sick, I'm sorry. Why? Because I am. Julio Jones, though, quickly became, immediately a big presence. And like I said, even through the Falcons going through tough times, high draft picks, just wasted draft picks, to be honest, Julio Jones remained a great receiver. And by that point, around 2018, 2019, people already considered Julio to be a future Hall of Famer, potentially one of the best all time. And at this point, a lot of people can almost unanimously agree that he is the best receiver of our generation. There are other guys that are up there with him, but Julio Jones has played on a level that no one else has for the past 10 years. And then in 2020, he strained his hamstring, which kept him out for a majority of the season. So, that kind of leads into part of why this trade is the way it is. At that point, Julio Jones puts in a trade request sometime in early February, because there was a report that he put in a trade request about 4 months ago. So it's either late January, early February. He asks for a trade. He doesn't demand one. There is a difference. He requests a trade, so he'll still play with them, but he would like to go somewhere else. And then rumors start flying rampant of Julio Jones is going to be traded. Julio Jones is going to here. There's pictures like this with that's shown here where he's posing with the fan wearing a Cowboys shirt, so everybody thinks he's going to the Cowboys. And everyone obviously knows it's going to happen after June 1st because then the Falcons save a bunch of cap space. And then Shannon Sharpe comes out, calls Julio Jones live on air, and gets him basically to reveal that he is, quote, out of there. Shannon Sharpe, maybe a little bit of a mischievous thing to do, but he kind of makes Julio reveal that he is gone. And then yesterday in the morning, I think it was 9 o'clock when I was in the middle of absolutely nowhere, Julio Jones got traded to the Tennessee Titans. And so, moving on to the actual trade itself, the trade ended up being the Titans got Julio Jones and a 6th rounder next year, and the Falcons in turn received a 2nd rounder this year and a 4th rounder next year. So this is basically about the value I thought that the Falcons were going to get for Julio Jones. I see a lot of people saying that, the Falcons got horrible value and all this stuff, and people are comparing it to DeAndre Hopkins and stuff, and then calling it a fair trade. A lot of people are really missing why this trade played out like it did. To address the whole DeAndre Hopkins comparison, that trade was stupid. Bill O'Brien traded an in his prime top 3 receiver for absolute trash. You have to keep in mind, Julio Jones is entering his age 32 season, just coming off of a hamstring injury. Being on the wrong side of 30 is already going to diminish your value, but let alone the fact that you just got injured at that age. Even if you're someone as great as Julio Jones, that's going to take down your value. Now, obviously, a 2nd rounder and a 4th rounder is still actually nice value. In fact, we'll get to my negatives and positives for each team on the trade, but really, this is actually pretty decent value for a player that, once again, just got hurt, is coming into his age 32 season, to where, honestly, I think at the end of the day, the Falcons received nice compensation, and the Titans got their big playmaker So overall, this is about what I thought it would be. When I did my trade predictions, I was giving a lot of second and fourth, third and fifth, stuff like that, with maybe a player. I thought maybe that the Falcons might get a player, a bit more compensation, but my Titans mock trade actually was a third rounder, a fourth rounder, and then Josh Reynolds. But it's a second rounder here, so that kind of makes up for that kind of value, I guess. So yeah, this is about where I thought they would get. One reason I didn't think the Titans would actually make this trade is because of the cap situation, and we'll get to that later. But also the fact that that video came out before everything about how he was working out with some of the Titans players, and AJ Brown was heavily recruiting him on Instagram and stuff. So I definitely think the Titans were still an option, obviously. Although they weren't my first choice, I definitely do like this move on both sides. So moving on to the Titans and their kind of overview of things, I give them overall an A for this trade. Some positives is that they get an absolutely great weapon. Arguably the best, like I said earlier, pretty much the best receiver of our generation. They get that for really a second round pick. Again, he is getting up there in age, but still, for a second-round pick, getting a weapon of his caliber, still great. And at this point, the Titans have such a deadly offense. Ryan Tannehill gets the job done. He wasn't in my top 10 quarterbacks, but I still think he's number 11, 12, 13. And one thing I see a lot of people saying is that it doesn't make sense as the Titans for a fit for Julio Jones, and it actually is a good fit. People say Ryan Tannehill doesn't have an arm, and Julio Jones said that he wanted a big arm quarterback, but Ryan Tannehill was ranked third in the league on accuracy on passes 20 yards or deeper. Maybe he doesn't come to mind when you think of a big-armed quarterback, but he's one of the best deep throwers in the league. So that's really not a concern. It's actually a very nice fit. And again, this Titans offense is just so deadly now. Ryan Tannehill gets the job done. Derrick Henry, we all know Derrick Henry. AJ Brown's looking to be a great up-and-coming receiver. You add Julio Jones to that, you're looking at potentially the best offense in the NFL, even over teams like the Buccaneers, the Chiefs, the Bills. It looks really deadly. And once again, it's good value at the end of the day because it's a all-pro, one of the best receivers all time for a second-round pick. Even with the injury and age concerns, still good value. That is where the negatives do come in, and the concerns rather than negatives. Injury concerns, obviously, he's, again, 32, just coming off of a hamstring injury. There's no reason to necessarily think he'll be bad, but he might not be like Julio Jones that we know. He's definitely past his prime, of course, but he can still put up great production for the Titans. And then also the salary cap. The Titans only had $3.6 million in salary cap last I checked. Julio Jones comes with a $15.3 million salary check, so they're negative $12 million in salary now, so they're going to have to rework a few contracts and stuff. But if anything, we've seen this offseason, teams do not care about the salary cap, so I'm sure they'll be fine with that, but so it's just more of a concern. Really, all around, this is a great trade on the Titans front, I think, and I give them an A for it. Then on the Falcons side of things, I give them an A-. Some positives to it. Again, decent value. For a 32-year-old receiver coming off of an injury, a second and a fourth-round pick is great value for that. People, that say they should have gotten a first and stuff, they were never going to get a first for Julio. But I also didn't think they would get as high as a second. So great value there on the Falcons front. It also clears a ton of cap space. They were dead last in cap space. Didn't even have I think it was barely $500,000. And Julio Jones clears $15.5 million for them. So they can at least sign their rookies now. That's great for them. And then just kind of something to note, not really positives per se. Ridley is now the wide receiver number 1, obviously with Julio gone. That is not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. Ridley played fantastic last year when he was the number 1. He looks to have a bright future there, so that's just something to note. Also, something else. I think a realistic move at this point actually could be Kyle Pitts moving to wide receiver. He's definitely has the athleticism and the traits to be a wide receiver. He pretty much is a wide receiver in a tight end's body. And the Falcons actually have very nice tight end depth. They have Hayden Hurst and Lee Smith behind Kyle Pitts, so it really might make more sense, honestly, to switch Kyle Pitts over to receiver because you already have two at worst, starter level guys behind Kyle Pitts. So that's a potential move they can make. Negatives and concerns. Before I talk about direction, the wide receiver depth, obviously not the best now without Julio, but once again, you can move Pitts to receiver. And I think Russell Gage showed a bit of potential, as well as the other guy that I can't say it's like Zacchaeus or something like that. He has a weird name. But besides that, really the one thing I question about this move for the Falcons, and really what gives them this A minus, is what is this team's direction? If you look at their moves over the past few months, right? They had the number 4 overall pick. They're obviously a pretty bad team. Their defense is god-awful, and their offense was good, but it's not, like, elite in my mind, especially now without Julio Jones. Getting rid of Julio Jones definitely did not help the team. So when you make a move like, trading away Julio Jones, it definitely feels more like you're rebuilding. Because he did not come in there and demand a trade. He requested one. So he was, as far as it seems, he was perfectly fine to stay there, even if he would want out at the end of the day. So trading Julio Jones definitely makes it seem like you're trying to rebuild. But then you take a case like the draft, where they took Kyle Pitts over, say, Justin Fields, and that's a sign that you're trying to compete right now because you feel good with Matt Ryan. So it's kind of weird because you have moves that would indicate that they're trying to rebuild, and then you have moves that would indicate they're trying to win now. And I'm sorry, but this is just not a win now team. I've never been that big a fan of Matt Ryan. I don't think he's like kind of like Tannehill. He's good enough to get the job done, but you need a better supporting cast than Mike Davis, Calvin Ridley, and Kyle Pitts. Even though they are great weapons, the offensive line is still middle of the road, and the defense, like I said, is god-awful. So it's kind of weird to me that this team, it's like they feel that they're trying to win now, when really they just can't, because their defense just sucks that bad, and getting rid of Julio Jones does not help you win now. So really, I just questioned, is the front office struggling to decide where they want to go with the team? Are they just actually idiots? I really am just confused by this team's direction right now, and that's what gives them this A minus. But otherwise, the trade itself, I do like. It's just, what is the Falcons' plan for the future? Are they even planning for the future? That's the only thing I wonder. Looking at their starting lineups now, Tannehill, like I said, solid enough quarterback, but you have Derrick Henry. These are PFF's predictions for next year, by the way, not last year. Derrick Henry, number 1. Julio Jones and AJ Brown, 5 and 6. Obviously, that's a super deadly receiving duo, maybe the best in the league, aside from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And then Anthony Firkser, we'll have to see how he handles being the starter. Obviously they lost Jonnu Smith, so we'll have to see how he steps up. He's more of a blocking tight end in my mind anyway, so I don't see him being a big part in the passing game. But I do see the Titans having a very, very solid a duel of a ground pound and play action offense. I think, now with Julio Jones and, you already had AJ Brown, you're able to chuck those deep balls and let your receivers trust your receivers. But at the same time, you still have Derrick Henry with a great offensive line to where you can run it down someone's throat and then hit him with a deep pass. I think it's a really scary duo, and this Titans offense, it's really good. And I think if the defense can just play well enough, we've seen that the defense does not have to be elite for you to win it all. We see that with the Chiefs, for example. It only takes a few games for them to play well. Let's say Bud Dupree does stay in the same form that he was in Pittsburgh for that final year. Let's say some of their signings work out. And really, if Caleb Farley plays to his potential, the Titans are a legitimate contender for the Super Bowl next year. If the defense isn't good enough, probably not, because the offense is great, but it's, you need at least somewhat of a capable defense. So it really does rely on the defense this year. With the Falcons over here, Matt Ryan, top 10 quarterback in PFF. Mike Davis was not even ranked. Calvin Ridley, 11. Russell Gage, not ranked. And Kyle Pitts was their 4. I agree. I think Kyle Pitts is going to be great his rookie year. Obviously, the offense is not looking terribly good. It's still nice. It's in the top half of the league, but just again, that defense is so bad. I don't know where the direction is with this team right now. I just kind of question some of their moves. Whereas the Titans over here, they're making all the right decisions. All they need now is their defense to play to their strengths. They need Julio to stay healthy, And this team is legitimately contending for a Super Bowl. They are a scary team, and so I think pretty easily here, the Titans definitely won this trade for me. But let me know what you guys thought down below. Who do you think won this trade? What would you give them as grades? Do you think Julio Jones is going to be a great player on the Titans? Let me know. If you guys did like the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see all you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.